Ladies and gentlemen, this is a story of motivation, tragedy, hope, and ultimately, broken dreams. It all began one fine evening on the 4th of May, 2020. It was a lovely evening, and I thought I'd go do some nighttime photography with my beloved Bronica GS-1. I was fresh out of Portra 400, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to test out the long exposure capabilities of Portra 800. Now, it's important to note I couldn't find the reciprocity charts for Portra 800 anywhere online, so I just used Portra 400's reciprocity charts and hoped for the best. Do F16 at about 14 seconds. Next, I think I definitely have to shoot my grandpa's dump truck here, which has this light. That light right there is just illuminating it perfectly. The color of these trees, I think, will be really nice, and that yellow too will look really good, hopefully. Okay, calculated a 2-minute and 13-second exposure, which is a 40-second exposure normally, but reciprocity, which I'm hopefully the Portra 400 chart transfers over to Portra 800, or else I'm gonna be screwed. But I'm gonna blast the shutter release cable, run out of the way because my shadow is gonna burn into the negative if I don't. I do want to talk about these images just to give some thoughts on how I feel Portra 800 performed. The original version of this image was way too bright, as were most of the other images. It was easily fixable in Lightroom, but I don't think Portra 400's reciprocity chart works for Portra 800. All right, this is the next composition that I'm looking at. Gonna shoot it portrait. It's gonna be a Pepsi machine, the garage door, and that green light from inside of the garage should be really cool. 2.5 seconds, 2.5 seconds, about 3.4 seconds. I think I'm gonna round up to 4. All right, here we go. Hopefully there's not too much micro jitter in this exposure. 4 seconds at F16. 3, 2, 1. I had to do a few things to this photo to get it to where I wanted it to be. I had to balance out the color hue of the shadows because it was a bit too purple, so I added some yellowish, greenish tones. And then once I finished that, I imported the image into Photoshop, where I created a mask around the soda machine and specifically toned the highlights down in only that part of the image. When I toned the highlights down in the overall photo, it kind of sucked the life out of other parts of the scene, which I really wasn't a fan of. It's a really nice scene behind me here with a garage and my grandpa's dump truck right there. Beautiful. And that green light is gonna look so interesting, I think. Hopefully. Once again, I had to bring the brightness and highlights down a ton on this photo, but it's definitely still a usable image. And it was at this moment, around 10 p.m. that fateful Monday night, that I made a very, very terrible decision. Well, fuck me. My adventurous nature got the better of me because I tried to place the Bronica up on my grandpa's dump truck to get a cool vantage point of this scene behind me. And the tripod legs were not exactly stable, I guess, because it just fell off of my grandpa's dump truck. About a 12-foot fall onto straight dirt. The prism finder took the brunt of the impact. It is completely cracked and no longer attaches to the top. I have to just rest it on top. I can still look through it and I can still see through the lens. So if this camera still fires and the shutter works, Bronicas are officially more of a tank than Mamiya and Pentax systems. Guess we'll try to shoot to the rest of the roll. And if we get images, holy shit. All right, guys, so this is gonna be F16 at 30 seconds after the camera fell off a dump truck. That's the settings. Just in case you didn't hear, it's F16 at 30 seconds, and that it factors in reciprocity and the fact that this camera just fell off of a dump truck onto cement. Okay, so cool settings, all right. By some miracle, this photo and the rest of the photos I shot that night still turned out. I thought that there would at least be light leaks in the film back, but to my surprise, most of the images were completely usable. The camera still, guys, I heard, are you fucking kidding me? The camera fell off a dump truck. The 40-year-old film camera fell off a dump truck onto dirt. What? Are you trolling me right now? I'm never buying another brand. Bronica GS-1 for life. As you can probably tell, I was a bit rattled the rest of the night, but I did have 4 images left on the roll, so I headed down to the beach. I just mainly wanted to make sure that the Bronica still worked, so I didn't take these images too seriously. but some of them actually turned out pretty cool. 4 more pictures. Light meter, it's too dark, doesn't even measure on the Richter scale, so I'm thinking we'll just round up to 10 minutes. That seems about right. We have some moonlight, so that's lighting the scene right now. I can't see jack shit through my viewfinder because it's so dark. Hope for the best, I guess. Now, I would never use this photo. It was a double exposure because I was testing the camera to make sure that the shutter still worked after I dropped it. But this was a 10-minute exposure, still underexposed. But I thought it was a kind of cool effect, so I wanted to share it with you guys anyway. Listen, I'll shut up about the camera falling off the dump truck from 12 feet in the air and somehow still functioning completely fine. But you guys need to understand that it's physically impossible for this camera still to be working. So somebody call Elon Musk and tell him to get his ass over to my house because there's some paranormal alien shit going on where this camera fell off of the dump truck. 3 photos left. Cranked it down to f4. I'm thinking, how about we roll with the old 4-minute exposure? Complete guess. Don't even care at this point. 4 minutes sounds good. We'll crank the timer and grab the shot. 4 minutes was a bit too long on this photo, but I can't really complain given that my metering was a complete guess. I really love the short star trails and how the color in the sky rendered. This was another photo that I completely guessed the exposure on, but it's probably my favorite from the roll. I shot this at f4, which allowed for the sky to be out of focus, causing a motion blur type effect in the star trails, which I think is super cool. I like the magenta cast on the rocks as well, and I think it has a cool cosmic vibe. This is another pretty cool photo. I used my phone flashlight to shine some light on the sign for about 15 seconds. The total exposure ended up being about 1.5 minutes, but I love the color of the grass and the outer space type feel that the background gives. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what happened to the GS-1 after its little Humpty Dumpty fall off my grandpa's dump truck. Did I go on eBay and order a new prism like any normal sane person would do? Hell no. See, I like to consider myself a bit of a handyman, so I took matters into my own hands and decided to super glue the prism back onto the body. I figured, I never use the waist level finder anyway, so it'll be a cool kind of battle scar, just have a permanently glued prism on my GS-1 body since the electronics and light meter and everything still worked. No harm, no foul. I got back up to my house, super glued around the edges, pressed down, left it there for a few minutes. Seemed like everything was good to go. Well, it's on there. And I went to bed that night, proud of myself for making the most out of a pretty crappy situation. The next morning, I woke up eager to see how my patch job worked. I grabbed the camera, headed outside, looked through the viewfinder, and well, so it turns out the Gorilla Glue didn't dry all the way before I placed my camera vertically back in my camera bag. So while I was sleeping, the Gorilla Glue was running all over the internals of my camera, all over the ground glass, and at the end of the day, it looked like a caterpillar took a shit in my viewfinder. I basically just dodged a bullet and then decided to shoot myself in the head anyway. Probably should have swallowed my pride and just bought a new prism on eBay, but hey, lesson learned. Alright guys, all jokes aside, I do want to share some final thoughts on Portra 800 for nighttime photography. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised. The pictures were less muddy and grainy than I thought they would be, and this film stock definitely has a ton of latitude. Completely guessed on all the exposures for the last half of the roll, and all but one photo still turned out. I will say that I don't think Portra 400's reciprocity chart works for Portra 800 because the first half of the roll, all those images that I was metering for, they were all overexposed as well. So if you have Portra 800's reciprocity chart, could you please send it my way? That would be extremely beneficial. Before I make a decision on whether or not I like Portra 400 or Portra 800 more for nighttime photography, I'm going to have to go back and ensure that all of my Portra 800 photos are correctly exposed the next time I shoot it. And that's going to require the correct reciprocity chart and for me to not drop my camera off of a dump truck. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you very much for watching. Not sure how I'm going to go about replacing the GS-1 as of yet, but in the meantime, I have the Japanese Hasselblad, the Bronica SQ to shoot, so we will be alright. Appreciate the support. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. That would be much appreciated. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy. Wish you all the best. I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.